I kind of pulled away a little bit from Chris. It was very hard to be close to someone and watch them self-destruct. And I did my best to use my loving influence and all of our friends to get him to do what he should do to take care of himself, and he didn't. Hi, this is Mike Balaban. Welcome to another episode of BAMMER Tales. Before I go any further, if you haven't already, please subscribe to my YouTube page and help us expand our audience. Secondly, if I sound congested today, I am. I had a sinus infection that would not go away despite antibiotics, and I ended up having nasal surgery on Friday evening, and they packed my nose with things which are still in there. So I'll get them out on Thursday, but right now I'm congested. Today, I'm going to focus on explaining how I met and befriended Chris Smith, my best friend from 1979 to 1986 when he passed away from AIDS, and explain the hole that fills my heart because he's no longer there, and yet one that I've had to get used to. I was living in New York in 1979. I was 27 years old in a conservative, closeted job at a commercial bank and didn't really have gay friends at all. I was out with my family and close fraternity brothers, but beyond that, I wasn't gay. And I hated my job, so I ended up quitting it. But just before I did, I went into a local bar, somewhat intimidated by the surroundings. It was called the Wildwood on the Upper West Side of Manhattan at the end of my block. And it was a country and western themed bar with sawdust on the floor. And I walked in and saw all the guys clad in denim jeans and leather, and I was kind of overwhelmed. But then I saw someone who I briefly knew. We had met a few nights earlier at an alumni function for my grad school in Manhattan. And I'd spoken with him, and he was so handsome. He was prematurely salt and pepper hair. He was really dapper, courtly, really bright, and obviously handsome. And all of a sudden, he's in the gay bar. So I walk over, I get up the courage, I remind him of where we met. He remembers me, we start chatting. I am immediately entranced by him and attracted to him. Somehow or other, we made plans to get together for dinner, and over the short amount of time before I left on my cross-country trip, we got to be pretty close in the few weeks. He did tell me that he had a boyfriend, and to me that meant he was off limits. I didn't realize yet, of course, that having a boyfriend and fooling around with somebody on the side was quite common in the gay world. But given that I'm kind of demisexual and have always wanted a relationship, not a trick, that had no appeal for me, even if I'd known. So I go off on my cross-country trip, and I learn how to be gay during that summer. I slept with several people. I learned how to meet guys in the bar. I got comfortable being in gay circumstances, so that when I returned in my little car cross-country to New York in the fall of '79, I was ready to pick up and have a gay life. And that's when I got back together with Chris, and we started going out together regularly, if not sometimes nightly, to bars. We would end up at the end of the night kind of tipsy, and we would go to my father's jazz nightclub at the time and have alcohol for free and maybe even have a little bit of food. And that was how we ended our evenings. Now, I should say that Chris and I did things like we went to the first ever LGBTQ march on Washington in October of '79 together, along with some visiting friends from out of town. And then we got invited together to the home of friends in Fire Island in 1980 and went out 3 times, one of which we did acid together. And Chris took me through the meat rack, the first time I'd ever seen that vaunted outdoor sex paradise, which is not, again, my style, but observing it was amazing. And then in 1981, we were out in a share house together. And then 1983, we went to Rio together on a cheapo budget package week tour and stayed in a B-class hotel. And a couple of other friends were down there. We'd go to the beach every day and to the bars at night. And Chris would end up in the sauna, the bathhouse, where he would have an internal and external massage, a massage completo from Teo, this beefy, bear-ish Brazilian masseur, which of course meant anal penetration and the massage. I tell in a separate video the story where I kind of did one better than him, but I'll save that. You can look for it on my YouTube channel. At the same time, Chris picked up guys almost every day, often ditching me at a restaurant, and I'd be left to pay the bill and go home alone. I got a little frustrated with him, but he was my best friend. Now, what I haven't mentioned is that during our evenings out in Manhattan, at the end of the night, drunk, probably high on marijuana, maybe some cocaine, we would stumble up the Upper West Side where we both lived, and my house came before his about a mile sooner. And he would often just pile into bed with me and crash, and we'd call it a night. And one of those times, I wake up and Chris has his tongue in my ear, and he's trying to make out and, have sex together, what I call puppy sex, no penetration. And, I had always found him attractive. And I was, I thought he would make a good boyfriend. And now that he was no longer together with his boyfriend, I was like, well, maybe this will work. It'd be very convenient. So I went along with it. And it was fine. Again, we were drunker than a skunk, so it wasn't the most passionate or eloquent sex. When I woke up in the morning, I thought things would have changed atmospherically, but they hadn't. And it didn't take long to realize that for Chris, sex was a toilet function, something he needed to do daily, whenever he felt like it. It was an urge that he didn't resist. And there I was, available, convenient. He was horny. We were drunk. Sex was what he needed. It didn't mean anything to him, and nor would it. And that's when I realized, nope, this won't happen again. So the next time Chris tried to stick his tongue in my ear in the middle of the night after a night out, I had to say, down, boy. It's not going to happen. And so we just remained best friends. And that happened all the way through 83, 84, 85. But AIDS was tightening its clutches on the city and the country. More and more of my friends were falling ill, and a few were dying, and it became frightening. And so if we hadn't paid close attention in 81, 82, 83, after the disease was first announced, by 84, 85, we were really attentive and had changed our behavior. Everyone was wearing rubbers. We were being very careful about what we did and doing less of it, except for Chris. Now, I didn't realize it because he mouthed all the right words. Yeah, I'm being careful. I'm slowing down. I'm wearing a rubber. But he really wasn't. And so in 1986, he had only been in the hospital once with thrush, which was a disease that accompanied HIV. And so it was often a sign that somebody was positive. Chris wouldn't let the doctor diagnose him. Every time a doctor got close to doing that, he would leave and change doctors. And so there were no clear signs other than his behavior that Chris was ill. He continued working, and then one day he left the office on a Tuesday afternoon, went home to see his father, who was visiting from Houston, from out of town, and he collapsed into a coma. His father rushed him to the hospital. The doctors attended to him. From Tuesday to Saturday, he was in the coma, and then he emerged. And his father asked him, shall I have your friends come see you? This unspoken context was to say goodbye, to see you, to say goodbye to you. And Chris, whether he was too proud or in denial, wouldn't let his father have us come in. He lapsed back into the coma, and on Monday or Tuesday, about a week after having last worked at his office, he passed away. Now, we were all in shock. While we knew he was not behaving strictly the way he should, we had no idea how out of control Chris was. Turns out when he'd been in the hospital that one time, The staff had urged him not to drink, smoke weed, do drugs, have sex. He needed to live a clean life. He needed to be very careful. Chris mouthed the right words. Sure, I'll do that. Thank you, doctors. Left in a cab, picked up the driver, had him stop at a liquor store, bought 2 bottles of wine, brought the guy home, had sex with him, drank all the liquor, and that was what Chris continued to do without any of us knowing it. Only his new roommate, who happened to be a young classmate of my sister's from her university, later told us at the wake that he didn't realize he was moving in to take care of somebody who was killing himself and dying. And so when Chris passed away and we got word that he had died, we were all stunned. We had a wake where we all came together and compared notes, and every one of us, when we pieced together the little bits, it became apparent that he was out of control. We had each thought we'd persuaded him to change his behavior, and he would say just what we needed to hear to soothe us and to comfort us, but he never changed. And his quick disappearance like that in less than a week left this huge hole in our hearts and created a great deal of pain and anger and regret. Could we have done something? Might we have intervened as a group? In reality, Chris wanted to live the way he lived, and on some level was prepared to die for it, and he did. So even today, 40 years later almost, I miss him tremendously. I do my best to pay tribute to him on my Instagram page and on the AIDS Memorial page on Instagram, as often as I can, and to keep his memory alive. And some of his friends and I still are in touch and reminisce over old times. That's one story of a best friendship and an AIDS fatality that came together. I hope you found this account, I don't want to say enjoyable or entertaining, but occupying your attention. And maybe you have someone who passed away from your life in the same way. Thank you for watching and listening. Please let me know if you have suggestions for topics, especially for issues that are relevant to the gay male community. And I will keep trying to do this for you. Thanks so much. Have a good day. BAMMER Tales.